Victoria Chen's hands didn't shake when she made decisions that affected thousands of jobs. They didn't shake when she presented to boards of directors or negotiated multi-million-dollar deals. But now, sitting alone in her corner office on the 42nd floor of a Manhattan skyscraper, staring at her phone screen, her hands trembled as she typed the message she'd been avoiding for 3 weeks. I need to hire someone to pretend to be my husband for money is no problem. Discretion required. She deleted it, typed it again, deleted it again. Outside her floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled in every direction, millions of people living their complicated, messy, real lives, while she sat in her glass tower planning an elaborate deception. At 38 years old, Victoria Chen was the youngest female CEO in her company's 70-year history. She'd built her reputation on brutal honesty, on cutting through pretense, on making the hard calls others avoided, and now she was about to hire a stranger to lie to her dying grandmother. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her phone buzzed. A text from her assistant Marcus. Your grandmother's nurse called again. She's asking about Thanksgiving weekend. Wants to know if you're bringing your husband. Victoria closed her eyes. Her grandmother Li Hua had been asking about the husband for 6 months now, ever since the cancer diagnosis. Ever since the doctors said she had maybe a year left. I want to see you happy before I go, Li Hua kept saying in Mandarin, her voice getting weaker each time Victoria visited. I want to know you're not alone. The problem was, Victoria had invented the husband 3 years ago in a moment of weakness during a family dinner. Her cousins had all been there with their spouses and children, asking the usual invasive questions about her love life, and her grandmother had looked at her with such sad, worried eyes. So Victoria had lied. She'd created a fictional boyfriend who worked overseas, who traveled constantly, who was wonderful but unavailable for family gathering. Over time, the fictional boyfriend had proposed. They'd married quietly. He was still traveling. The lie had grown like a tumor, feeding on itself, becoming more elaborate each passing month. And now her grandmother was dying, and Victoria couldn't bear the thought of Li Hua spending her final months worrying that her granddaughter would die alone and unloved. If you've ever built a lie so elaborate, you couldn't find your way back to the truth. If you've ever chosen loneliness over vulnerability because it felt safer, you need to hear what happens next. Stay with us. Victoria typed the message one more time, this time in a private messaging she'd found through discreet research, a place where wealthy people hired actors, escorts, companions for events where appearances mattered more than reality. She hit send before she could change her mind. The response came within an hour, not from the forum administrator but from someone who'd seen her post directly. I can help. Professional actor, experienced with high-stakes events. References available. When and where. Victoria looked at the profile. Daniel Martinez, 36, based in Brooklyn. His photos showed a man with kind eyes and an easy smile. Dark hair just starting to gray at the temples. The kind of face that looked trustworthy without being bland. His profile mentioned theater work, corporate training videos, event hosting. Nothing sleazy, nothing that set off alarm bell. She messaged back. I need someone to pose as my husband for Thanksgiving weekend at my grandmother's home in Connecticut. 3 days, November 23rd through 25th. You'll need to be convincing. My grandmother is sharp even though she's sick. $25,000. His response came quickly. That's generous. What's the catch? Victoria appreciated the directness. The catch is, my grandmother is dying. This is her last Thanksgiving. I need her to believe I'm happy. I need her to die thinking I'm not alone. If you can't commit to that level of performance, don't waste my time. There was a longer pause this time. Then, can we meet in person? I don't take jobs like this without understanding what I'm walking into. They met 2 days later at a quiet coffee shop in Chelsea, the kind of place where people minded their own business. Victoria arrived early, taking a corner table where she could see the entrance. She wore jeans and a sweater, her hair down, trying to look less like a CEO and more like a regular person. It felt like wearing a costume. Daniel arrived exactly on time. In person, he was taller than she'd expected, maybe 6'1", with an athlete's build, and those same kind eyes from his photos. He ordered coffee and sat across from her without preamble. Tell me about your grandmother, he said. Victoria hadn't expected that. She'd prepared to discuss logistics, expectations, payment terms, not to talk about Lee. She raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 9. She gave up everything, her life in Taiwan, her friends, her comfort, to move to America and take care of me. She worked 3 jobs to put me through college. Everything I am, everything I've achieved, I owe to her. And you lied to her about being married because she spent her whole life sacrificing for, because she worries I'm too focused on work, too isolated, too much like she was after my grandfather died. Because I couldn't stand to see her worry about me when she should be focused on herself. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. She hated that. I know it's a terrible reason. I know the lie makes it worse. But I can't tell her the truth now. She's too weak. It would break her heart. Daniel studied her for a long moment. What's the real story? Why are you actually alone? Excuse me? You're successful, intelligent, clearly capable of maintaining our relationships, at least professionally. So what is it? Married to your work? Trust issues? Bad breakup? Victoria felt anger flash through her. I'm paying you to pretend, not to psychoanalyze me. If I'm going to convince your dying grandmother that I love you, I need to understand why someone wouldn't. His voice was gentle, not accusatory. I need to know what to work with. She almost walked out, almost told him to forget it, that she'd find someone else who'd just take the money and follow instruction. But something in his directness reminded her of herself, of the way she cut through pretense in boardroom. I don't let people in, she said finally. I haven't had a relationship last longer than 3 months in 10 years. I work 80-hour weeks. I prioritize my career over everything. I'm not particularly warm or nurturing. Men find me intimidating, and honestly, I find most of them boring or threatened by my success. There, is that enough honesty for you? Daniel smiled. It's a start. Okay, I'll do it. But I have conditions. Name them. 1. We spend time together before Thanksgiving, at least 4 or 5 meetings. If your grandmother is sharp, she'll see through us immediately if we don't know each other. 2. You tell me the truth about your relationship history, your life, what makes you happy. I need material to work. 3. You let me direct how we interact during the... You're hiring me for my expertise in performance. Trust me to make believable. Agreed? Anything else? Yeah. If at any point this feels wrong, if your grandmother seems upset or confused or like we're causing harm, we tell the truth. I won't be part of causing more pain to a dying woman, money or no money. Victoria respected that. Agreed. They shook hands, and Victoria felt something unexpected, relief. Not just that she'd found someone to help with her impossible situation, but that maybe for 3 days she wouldn't have to be alone. Over the next 2 weeks, Victoria and Daniel met 5 times. First at another coffee shop, where he interviewed her like he was researching a role, which, she supposed, he was. He asked about her childhood with Li Hua, about her rise through corporate ranks, about her hobbies, which turned out to be almost non-existent. I read financial reports, she'd said. I go to the gym. That's about it. We need to give you a personality, he'd said, not unkindly. What did you used to like, before you became this? She'd thought hard. I used to paint. Watercolors. Li Hua used to take me to Central Park on Sundays, and I'd paint the bridges, the lake, the skyline. I was actually pretty good. When did you stop? College, I guess. No time. And then after college, even less time. Okay, so, our story is, I fell in love with you when I saw you painting in Central Park 3 years ago. I asked what you were working on. You told me to go away. I persisted. That feels authentic. Their second meeting was dinner at a small Thai restaurant in Brooklyn, Daniel's neighborhood. He wanted her to see where he supposedly lived, to know the details of his life that she'd need to reference naturally. He shared an apartment with 2 roommates, both artists. He did theater when he could get roles, corporate work to pay bills, and occasional gigs like this one, though he admitted most weren't this elaborate. Why do you do this? Victoria asked. The hired companion thing. You're clearly talented. You could probably make a living just from acting. Could I? Daniel smiled sadly. Do you know how many talented actors there are in New York? Thousands. Tens of thousands. All of us waiting tables, doing temp work, taking whatever gigs we can find. This pays better than 6 months of background work in TV shows. And honestly, sometimes it's interesting. I get to step into people's lives, solve problems, make them happy for a moment. There are worse ways to make rent. Don't you ever feel like you're enabling people's dysfunction? Sometimes. But then I meet someone like you, who's not trying to impress business partners or fool investors. You're trying to give comfort to a dying woman who gave you everything. That doesn't feel like dysfunction. That feels like love expressed badly. Victoria hadn't expected him to understand. She'd expected judgment, or at least professional detachment. His empathy unsettled her. Their third meeting was a walk through Central Park. Daniel insisted. If our story is that we met here, we should actually know it together. It was a cold November afternoon, the trees mostly bare, the lake gray and choppy. Victoria realized she hadn't been to the park in years, despite living less than 2 miles away. You used to come here every Sunday with your grandmother, Daniel said. Do you remember what you talked about? Everything. Nothing. She'd tell me stories about Taiwan, about my grandfather, about her childhood. I'd complain about school, about kids who made fun of my accent. She'd listen like everything I said mattered. It did matter. I know that now. Then I thought everyone had that. Someone who listened like that. They stopped at Bow Bridge, the same bridge Victoria used to paint. Daniel leaned against the railing, looking at her thoughtfully. Can I ask you something personal? You've been asking me personal things for 2 weeks. This is different. When was the last time you cried? The question landed like a punch. I don't cry. Everyone cries. I don't. Not since I was a teenager. Crying doesn't solve problems. It doesn't close deals or make companies profitable or let you feel human. Victoria looked away, out at the lake. Being human is overrated. Being successful is better. Is it? Are you happy, Victoria? No one had asked her that in years, maybe ever. I'm accomplished. I'm respected. I'm financially secure. That's better than happiness. No, it's not. It's just safer. She wanted to argue, but couldn't find the word because he was right. Somewhere along the way, she'd confused safety with success, isolation with strength. She'd built her entire life around never needing anyone, never being vulnerable, never being the girl who'd lost her parents and been helpless to stop it. Their fourth meeting was at Victoria's apartment, a sleek, minimalist space in a dorm building on the Upper West Side. Daniel needed to see how she lived, to understand the environment he was supposed to have been part of for 3 years. He walked through slowly, taking in the expensive furniture, the bare walls, the complete absence of personal touches except for one framed photo of Li Hua on a shelf. This is the saddest apartment I've ever seen, he said finally. It's clean and functional. It's a hotel room. You don't live here. You just exist between work shifts. What's your point? My point is your grandmother is going to take one look at this life you've built and know something's wrong. Husband or no husband. You can't fake happiness in an environment this sterile. So what do you suggest? We buy some things. Art, books, photos of us. We create evidence of a life together. And you need to actually seem happy when we're at her house. Not accomplished, not successful, happy. I don't know if I remember. Daniel stepped closer, his voice gentle. Then we practice. Right now. Tell me something that makes you happy. Something real, not professional achievement. Victoria thought hard. When I visit Li Hua, she makes tea. This specific jasmine tea from Taiwan. The smell of it reminds me of being little, of feeling safe. That makes me happy. Good. What else? There's a bakery near my office. Sometimes I go there early before meetings and watch the bakers through the window making bread. The way they work with their hands, creating something tangible. It's meditative. See? You can access happiness. You just need to remember how. Their fifth meeting was 2 days before Thanksgiving. Daniel brought photos he'd created using Photoshop. Pictures of them together at various locations, carefully crafted to look authentic. A selfie at a restaurant, a photo at a wedding, a picture of them hiking somewhere rural. For your grandmother's house, he explained, in case she wants to see evidence. We'll frame a few, bring them as gifts. He also brought a ring, simple gold band, elegant, exactly what Victoria would have chosen for herself. You need to wear this starting now, he said. Get used to the weight of it. You've supposedly been married 2 years. Your body should know it's there. Victoria slipped it on. It fit perfect. How did you know my size? I'm observant. It's my job. They sat in her apartment going over the story they'd tell, how they met, how he proposed, what their life together was like. Daniel insisted on details that felt intimate, real. I make you breakfast on Sundays, he said. Scrambled eggs with cheese. The way your grandmother used to make them. You always steal a bite before I'm finished cooking. You pretend you're checking if they're done right, but really you just can't wait. That's very specific. That's what makes it believable. Liars generalize. Truth is in the specific details. You're good at this. I know. He smiled. Are you ready for this weekend? Really ready? Victoria looked at the ring on her finger, at this man who'd somehow become more real to her in 2 weeks than most people she'd known for years. I don't know, but we're doing it anyway. That's the spirit. Thanksgiving morning, Daniel picked Victoria up in a rental car, a sensible Honda that was appropriately middle class for his supposed income as a corporate trainer. Victoria's real Mercedes stayed in her building's garage. She'd packed a bag with casual clothes, jeans and sweaters instead of her usual power suits, and felt oddly nervous. They drove north toward Connecticut. You're quiet, Daniel observed, navigating through traffic leaving the city. I'm thinking about what we're doing, whether it's wrong, having second thoughts, always, but not enough to turn back. She looked at him. Are you nervous? A little. I've done fake boyfriend gigs before, even a fake fiancé once for a wedding, but never for someone dying. The stakes feel different. They are different. If we mess this up, her last memory of me will be a lie she saw through. That's worse than just telling her the truth now. We won't mess it up. Daniel reached over and took her hand, his palm warm against hers. Remember, we've been married 2 years. This kind of casual touch should feel natural. But it didn't feel casual to Victoria. It felt electric, significant, like something that meant more than it should. She told herself it was just because she was so unused to being touched, to physical affection of any kind. It had been over a year since she'd even been on a date, longer since she'd let anyone close enough to hold her hand without it being transactional. Li Hua's house was a modest colonial in a quiet neighborhood in Fairfield, about an hour from Manhattan. Victoria had bought it for her grandmother 5 years ago, insisting Li Hua stop working, stop sacrificing, let herself be taken care of for. The house had a small garden that Li Hua had filled with vegetables and flowers, a front porch with rocking chair, warmth that Victoria's sterile apartment completely lacked. A nurse answered the door, a kind-faced woman named Angela, who'd been with Li Hua for 3 months. "She's been so excited you were coming," Angela said quietly. "Today is a good day. She's alert, comfortable, but she tires easily, so don't be alarmed if she needs to rest." Victoria's chest tightened. She could feel Daniel's hand on the small of her back, steadying. Li Hua was in the living room, sitting in her favorite chair by the window, wrapped in blankets despite the house being. She'd lost so much weight, her face gaunt, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes lit up when she saw Victoria, that familiar brightness that had guided Victoria through childhood. "My girl," Li Hua said in Mandarin, reaching out. Finally, Victoria crossed the room and hugged her grandmother carefully, terrified of hurting her, of this fragile body that used to seem so strong. "I'm here, Po. I'm sorry it's been a few weeks. You're busy, important work." Li Hua's eyes moved to Daniel, curiosity and joy mixing in her expression. "And this must be Daniel. Finally I meet the man who stole my granddaughter's heart." Daniel stepped forward with perfect ease, kneeling beside Li Hua's chair so he was at her level. "Mrs. Chen, it's an honor to finally meet you. Victoria has told me so much about you. Call me Li Hua, please. Your family now." She reached out and touched his face, a gesture so tender it made Victoria's throat tight. "Handsome, kind eyes, good strong hand. You take care of my Victoria?" "Every day," Daniel said, and the sincerity in his voice sounded real even to Victoria. "She's the most remarkable woman I've ever known." Li Hua smiled, satisfied. "This I know already, but it's good you know it too." She switched to English, her accent thick but her meaning clear. "You make her happy? She smiles more now?" "I try my best, though honestly, she's the one who makes me happy. I'm the lucky one." "Good answer." Li Hua laughed, which turned into a cough. Angela appeared with water, helping her drink. When the coughing subsided, Li Hua waved away their concern. I'm fine. I don't want to waste our time talking about my old body. I want to hear about your life together. Tell me everything." And so they did. Sitting in the living room, Victoria and Daniel wove the story they'd practiced. But something unexpected happened. It didn't feel like performance. It felt real. When Daniel talked about falling in love with Victoria watching her paint in Central Park, he looked at her with something that resembled actual affection. When Victoria described their quiet Sunday mornings together, she almost believed they'd happen. Li Hua listened with rapt attention, asking questions, laughing at the right moments, her face glowing with happiness. "I knew it," she said finally. "I knew my Victoria would find someone worthy of, someone who sees how special she." "It wasn't hard to see," Daniel said, squeezing Victoria's hand. "She tries to hide it under all that corporate armor, but the real Victoria is extraordinary." After lunch, which Angela had prepared, Li Hua grew tired and went to rest. Victoria and Daniel stood in the kitchen cleaning dishes, falling into an easy rhythm that surprised them both. "You're good at this," Victoria said quietly. "At washing dishes? At making her believe. At making me almost believe." Daniel dried a plate slowly. "Victoria, can I tell you something? And you can't get mad. That's never a good start to a sentence. I don't think I'm acting anymore. Or at least, not entirely." Victoria's hands stilled in the soapy water. "What do you mean?" "I mean over the past 2 weeks. Getting to know you. Seeing past the CEO exterior to the woman who still remembers how to paint, who buys bakery bread just to watch it being made, who loves her grandmother enough to orchestrate this elaborate deception. I've started to actually care about you, and that complicates things. Daniel, I know this is a job. I know you're paying me. I know when Monday comes we go back to our separate lives. I'm just telling you the truth because your grandmother asked if I make you happy, and I realized I wish I actually could. Not as a performance, for real." Victoria didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to dismiss it as him getting too deep into the role. But another part, a part she'd kept locked away for years, recognized something true in his words. She'd felt it too. The blurring of lines between performance and reality, between hired companion and genuine connection. "We should stay focused on this weekend," she said finally, not ready to acknowledge what was happening. "Li Hua is what matters. You're right. I'm sorry. Professional boundaries." But his voice carried disappointment that felt authentic. That night, they shared the guest room, twin beds that Li Hua had insisted would be fine since you've been married long enough to not need to be on top of each other every minute. Victoria lay awake long after Daniel's breathing had evened out into sleep, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything he'd said, thinking about how easy it had been to slip into the role of wife, of loved person, of someone who had a partner to share the weight of life with, thinking about how much she wanted it to be. Friday morning dawned cold and bright. Victoria woke to find Daniel already gone and panic fluttered briefly in her chest until she heard voices from downstairs. Li Hua's laugh, weak but genuine, and Daniel's deeper voice responding. She found them in the kitchen, Daniel making scrambled eggs while Li Hua supervised from her chair at the table, wrapped in her blankets. "Your husband is teaching me his secret recipe," Li Hua said in Mandarin when Victoria appeared. "He says it's the key to your heart." "I'm pretty sure my heart doesn't work like other people," Victoria said, kissing her grandmother's forehead. "Everyone's heart works the same," Li Hua replied. "Some people just build thicker walls around them." Daniel served the eggs, and they tasted exactly how Li Hua used to make them, creamy with just enough cheese, the way Victoria remembered from childhood mornings when everything felt safe. She looked at him across the table, wondering how he'd gotten the recipe, realizing he must have asked Li Hua about it yesterday while Victoria was unpacking. The detail, the care of that gesture, undid something in her chest. After breakfast, Li Hua asked them to help her with something. She led them slowly to a closet in the hall, Angela hovering nearby in case she needed support. From the top shelf, Li Hua pulled down an old shoebox, dusty and worn. "I want you to have this," she said, handing it to Victoria. "Your grandfather gave it to me on our wedding day. Now it's for you." Inside was a jade bracelet, deep green and luminous, clearly old and valuable. "Popo, I can't." "Yes, you can. I want you to wear it to remember where you come from, to remember that love is not weak. My grandmother gave it to me, her mother gave it to her. Now it's yours." Li Hua's eyes were. "You think I don't see how you are, Victoria? How you make yourself hard, how you trust no one, how you work and work and work so you don't have to But this weekend, watching you with Daniel, I see something different. I see you letting someone in." Finally, Victoria felt tears threatening for the first time in years. "I'm trying, Popo." "I know, child. I know." Li Hua looked at Daniel. "You take care of her. She pretends she doesn't need taking care of, but she does. We all do." "I will," Daniel said, and Victoria heard the catch in his voice. "I promise." That afternoon, while Li Hua napped, Victoria and Daniel walked through the neighborhood. The day was crisp, leaves crunching under their feet, the smell of fireplaces starting to burn. They didn't talk for a long time, just walked side by side, hands occasionally brushing. "I can't do this," Victoria said finally. "Do what?" "Pretend anymore. Last night you said you weren't entirely acting. Well, neither am I, and that terrifies me." Daniel stopped walking. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because I don't know how to do this. Real relationships, real vulnerability, real connection. I know how to negotiate contracts and manage P&L statements and make difficult decisions. I don't know how to be someone's wife, not really. I don't know how to be soft when everything in me has been trained to be hard." "Victoria, you've been soft all weekend, with your grandmother. You're soft in the way you look at her, the way you help her stand up, the way your voice changes when you speak Mandarin to her. Softness isn't about being weak. It's about letting yourself care about something more than you care about being invulnerable." "But what happens after this weekend? You go back to Brooklyn, I go back to my sterile apartment, 80-hour work weeks. We pretend this was just a job? Is that what you want?" "No, but I don't know if I'm capable of anything else." Daniel took her hands, both of them, holding them between his like he was trying to warm something frozen. "Can I tell you the truth about why I took this job? It wasn't just the money. I've turned down gigs that paid more. I took it because your post, that desperate message about needing someone to help you fake love for your dying grandmother, it was the saddest and most human thing I'd ever read. I wanted to meet the person who was that successful and that lonely. I wanted to see if I could help. And now that you have, now I don't want to stop. Not because you're paying me, because somewhere over these 2 weeks, I fell for the woman who pretends she doesn't paint anymore but whose apartment has watercolor stains on the windowsill, who claims she doesn't have hobbies but can quote entire financial reports from memory because she finds patterns beautiful, who built walls so high to protect herself but is still willing to orchestrate an elaborate lie to comfort someone she loves." Victoria felt the tears she'd held back for so many years start to fall. "I don't know how to do this. I'll hurt you. I'll prioritize work. I'll forget to call. I'll be terrible at being what you need. What I need is someone real. Not perfect, just real. Can you do that?" "I can try. I'm terrified, but I can try." He kissed her then, there on a row, suburban Connecticut street with fall leaves swirling around them, and Victoria felt something crack open inside her chest. Not breaking, opening, like a door that had been locked for so long she'd forgotten it was there. That evening at dinner, Li Hua noticed something different. "You two are glowing," she said in Mandarin, her voice teasing despite her exhaustion. "What happened today?" Victoria looked at Daniel, then at her grandmother. "Popo, I need to tell you something." Daniel started to protest, But Victoria shook her head. She couldn't lie anymore. Not to Li Hua, not to herself. Daniel and I didn't meet 3 years ago. We met 2 weeks ago. I hired him to pretend to be my husband because I couldn't bear the thought of you worrying about me being alone. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for lying to you. The silence that followed felt endless. Angela looked uncomfortable, starting to leave the room. Li Hua waved her back. You think I don't know this? Li Hua said finally, her eyes twinkling despite everything. Victoria's jaw dropped. What? Victoria, I'm dying. I'm not stupid. You think I believe a man you've supposedly been married to for 2 years never once came to visit me until now? That he never appeared in a single photo on your social media? That you never mentioned a single specific detail about him until recently? Li Hua laughed softly. I knew the husband was fake. I knew from the beginning. You knew? Victoria felt the world tilting. This whole time, you knew I was lying? Of course I knew, but I also knew why you were lying. Because you love me, because you didn't want me to worry, so I pretended to believe. Li Hua reached across the table, taking Victoria's hand with her trembling. But what I didn't know, what I hoped for but couldn't be sure of, was whether you would ever let yourself actually find what you were pretending to have. I don't understand. You hired someone to play the part of a husband, but in the process of playing, you both found something real. I see it. The way you look at each other now is different from yesterday. Yesterday you were acting. Today you are feeling. Victoria looked at Daniel, who seemed equally stunned. You let us keep lying to you. I let you find your way to truth. There's a difference. Li Hua coughed, and Angela brought water. When she could speak again, her voice was softer. Victoria, when your parents died, when I came to America to raise you, I watched you build walls. I understood why. Losing them hurt you in ways a child shouldn't have to hurt. You decided never to need anyone again, never to be that vulnerable. But child, that's not living. That's just existing in a smaller and smaller cage, Victoria whispered. I'm starting to understand that. This man, this Daniel, he came into your life for fake reasons, but he sees you, the real you, not the CEO you, not the controlled you. He sees the girl who used to paint bridges and tell me her dreams, and you're letting him see you. That's real no matter how it started. Daniel cleared his throat, his voice rough. Li Hua, I should tell you, I've never done anything like this before that felt this significant. I've played roles my whole life as an actor, but the last 2 days with Victoria, with you, it's been the most honest I've felt in years. I know this started as a transaction, but it's not that anymore, at least not for me. Good, Li Hua said firmly, because my granddaughter deserves someone who sees her value, and you, Daniel, you deserve someone who will challenge you to be more than just an actor playing parts. You can make each other better if you're brave enough. I'm not sure I'm brave enough, Victoria. I'm 38 years old. I've been alone by choice for most of my adult life. I don't know if I can change. You're already changing. Right now, sitting here, telling me the truth even though it's hard. That's changing. Crying, which I see you, trying not to do again. That's changing. Admitting you're scared instead of pretending you're invulnerable. That's changing. Li Hua's expression grew more serious. Victoria, I'm not going to be here much longer. The doctors say weeks, maybe a month if I'm lucky. I don't want to leave this world with you still locked in that prison you built. I want to know you'll let yourself be. Popo, please don't talk about. I need to talk about. We've avoided it long enough. I'm dying, child. And that's okay. I've lived a good life. A full life. I raised you. I watched you become extraordinary. But my one regret would be leaving you alone. So promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll try. With Daniel, or with someone else if this doesn't work. Promise me you'll stop choosing safety over happiness. Promise me you'll paint again, and feel things, and let yourself be messy and human and imperfect. Promise me you'll remember that the walls we build to protect our hearts also. Keep out the very things that make life. Victoria was crying openly, not caring anymore about control or composure. I promise, Popo. Good. Now both of you come here. Li Hua held out her arms, and Victoria and Daniel both knelt beside her chair. She placed one hand on each of their heads, like a blessing. Love is not transaction. Love is not permanence. Love is showing up when it's hard, being honest when it hurts, choosing each other even you're scared. You both know this now. Don't forget it. That night, lying in their twin beds in the guest room, Victoria spoke into the darkness. Daniel? Yeah? I don't want this to end on Monday. I don't want to go back to pretending this didn't happen. Neither do I. But I need you to understand something. I can't be a secret. I can't be someone you compartmentalize, who exists separate from your real life. If we do this, I need all of you. The CEO and the woman who paints, the controlled one and the messy one, all of it. That's terrifying. I know, but that's the deal. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Okay, all of me. I don't know how yet, but I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together. That's kind of the point. Saturday was quieter. Li Hua slept more, her body showing the strain of the previous day's excitement. Angela warned them she was pushing herself too hard, that they should prepare for her to be very tired on Sunday. But when she was awake, she was present, asking them about their plans, making them promise to visit together soon, though they all knew that soon might not come. Victoria spent the afternoon in the living room with old photo albums Li Hua had kept, pictures of her grandparents in Taiwan, of her parents as young people in love, of herself as a child, painting in parks, and smiling with gap-toothed joy. Daniel sat beside her, looking at the images, asking questions, building a fuller picture of the woman he was falling for. "You were a happy kid," he observed. "I was. Before the accident. After that, I learned that happy was dangerous. Happy meant vulnerable. Happy meant you could lose everything in a moment. So you chose never to be happy again? I chose to be safe instead. And now?" Victoria looked at him. "Now I'm choosing to be terrified and try anyway." Sunday morning, Li Hua was too weak to get out of bed. Angela helped her sit up against pillows, and Victoria and Daniel brought breakfast to her room. She ate very little, but she smiled watching them together, the way they'd learned to move around each other, the casual intimacy that had developed from performance into something genuine. "You know what I'm grateful for," Li Hua said in her voice barely above a whisper. "That I got to see this. That my last memories of you won't be of the hard, closed-off woman you'd become. I get to see you soft again. I get to see you loved. I'm grateful too, Popo, for everything, for raising me, for sacrificing, for being patient with me even when I didn't deserve it. You always deserved it. You just didn't believe you did." Li Hua reached for Daniel's hand. "You take care of her. She will work too much. She will try to control everything. She will forget to eat real food and will survive on coffee and determination. Don't let her disappear into that person again." "I won't," Daniel promised. "And if I do my job right, she won't let me disappear into roles that aren't real either. We'll keep each other honest." "Good. That's what love should be. Mirrors that show us who we really are, not who we're pretending to be." They left late Sunday afternoon, both reluctant to go, knowing Li Hua was weaker than they'd arrived. Angela walked them to the door, her expression grave. "She's declining faster than we expected. It might only be days now. I'm sorry." Victoria felt the words like a physical blow. "I'll come back tomorrow. I'll take time off work. She knows you love her," Angela said gently. "That's what matters. And she's at peace now, seeing you happy. Let her have that." The drive back to Manhattan was quiet. Daniel held Victoria's hand the entire way, not speaking, just present. When they reached her building, he parked and turned to face her. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now I pay you what I promised. $25,000 for 3 days of performance." "Victoria, let me finish. And then I ask if you'd be willing to accept a different payment instead." "What kind of payment?" "Dinner. Real dinner, not a performance. Tomorrow night, if you're free. And then maybe the night after that. And maybe we keep having dinners until we figure out what this actually is between us." Daniel smiled. "I think I can accept those terms. Though I should warn you, I'm going to insist we do things that make you uncomfortable, like going to museums and taking walks without purpose, and maybe even painting in Central Park on Sundays." "That sounds terrible." "I know. But you'll do it anyway because you're choosing to be brave now. I'm choosing to try to be brave. There's a difference." "Not really. Bravery is just fear you're walking through instead of running from." Victoria kissed him then, there in the car outside her building, and it felt different from the kiss in Connecticut. That one had been about opening a door. This one was about choosing to walk through it. Li Hua died 4 days later, peacefully in her sleep with Angela beside her. Victoria was there within an hour, had in fact been visiting every day since returning from Thanksgiving, and she sat beside her grandmother's bed holding a hand that was already growing cold, crying the tears she'd held back for so many. Daniel came when she called. Not because she'd asked him, but because he simply showed up, the way partners do. He sat with her in that quiet room, not trying to fix anything or offer platitude, just being present while she grieved. The funeral was small, but beautiful. Victoria's cousins came, extended family, neighbors Li Hua had befriended over the years. Daniel stood beside Victoria through all of it, and no one questioned his presence because it was so clearly where he belonged. At the reception after, one of Victoria's aunts pulled her aside. "Your grandmother talked about Daniel in her last days," she said in May. "She told me she was grateful you'd finally let someone in. She said you'd been so closed off for so long. She was worried you'd forgotten how to love, but seeing you with him changed that." "She knew," Victoria said. "She knew we'd started as something fake, but she also knew we'd become something real. That's the best kind of real, the kind you choose, not the kind that just happens to you." In the weeks after Li Hua's death, Victoria did something she hadn't done in 15 years. She took time off work. Real time. Not just a long weekend or a few personal days. She took 2 weeks, and Daniel spent them doing nothing of consequence. They walked through Central Park, and Victoria brought her old watercolors, rusty and uncertain at first, then gradually remembering the feel of brush on paper. They cooked dinner in her apartment, which slowly started to look less like a hotel room and more like a place where two people were building a life. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, learning each other beyond the roles they'd played. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," Victoria admitted one night, lying in Daniel's arms in her bed, which no longer felt like just her bed. "I keep thinking you'll realize I'm too much work, or I'll realize this is too hard, or something will break this. Things don't break unless you let them. And yes, you're going to work too much sometimes. And I'm going to be broke sometimes because acting doesn't pay consistently. And we're going to have fights about whose turn it is to do dishes, or whether we can really afford to eat out this week. But that's not breaking. That's just life. How are you so calm about all this?" "I'm not calm. I'm terrified. But I'm also clear. I know what I want. I want this. With you. Real and messy and imperfect. The question is, do you?" Victoria thought about Li Hua, about those final conversations about walls and cages and choosing happiness over safety. "Yes, I want this. Even though it scares me. Especially because it scares." 6 months later, Victoria stood in front of her company's board of directors and announced something unprecedented. She was stepping back from the CEO role, moving into a chairman position that would require less than half the hours. "I've spent 15 years building this company," she said, "and I'm proud of what we've accomplished. But I'm also aware that I've sacrificed parts of myself I'm not willing to sacrifice anymore. I want a life outside these walls. I want to be present for the person I love. I want to remember what it means to be human, not just successful." The board was shocked. Some were supportive, others concerned about optics, about investors, about market reaction. But Victoria had learned something from Daniel, from Li Hua, from those 3 days in Connecticut that had changed everything. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself over everyone's expectation. Daniel was waiting outside the boardroom when the meeting ended. "How'd it go?" "I'm officially no longer running my own company. I'm just chairman, which sounds impressive but mostly means I show up for quarterly meetings and strategic planning sessions. How do you feel?" "Liberated. Terrified. Both." "Good. That means you're doing it right." They walked out of the building together, Victoria's hand in Daniel's, and she realized something profound. For the first time in her adult life, she wasn't the most important thing in her own life anymore. Daniel was their relationship was equally important. The life they were building together mattered as much as any career achievement, any professional milestone, any board approval. It wasn't that she'd stopped being ambitious or driven. She still cared about her work, still wanted the company to succeed, but she'd found balance. The thing that had always seemed impossible, the thing she'd convinced herself she didn't need. She'd found it by accidentally hiring someone to fake love her, and then discovering what real love actually felt like. A year after that Thanksgiving weekend on a cold November morning, Victoria and Daniel stood on Bow Bridge in Central Park. It was early, the city still waking up, the lights soft and golden. Victoria had her watercolors, painting the bridge the way she used to as a child, while Daniel watched and occasionally made terrible jokes to make her laugh. "You know what I was thinking?" Daniel said, leaning against the railing. "What?" "We should get married. For real this time." Victoria's brush stilled on the paper. "Are you proposing?" "I'm suggesting. Proposing would involve a ring and probably a better speech." "I don't need a better speech. I just need to know you mean it." "I mean it. I want to be your real husband, not your fake one. I want all the legal paperwork and boring logistics and tax benefits. But mostly I want the promise. The one that says we're in this together. We're choosing each other. Every day. Even when it's hard." Victoria set down her brush and turned to face him fully. "Yes. Yes. Yes. I'll marry you. For real. With all the paperwork and logistics and promises. Because you taught me something I'd forgotten. That being vulnerable isn't the same as being weak. That letting someone in doesn't mean losing yourself. That love isn't a transaction or a performance, it's just showing up honestly, day after day, and choosing to keep showing up even when it's scary." Daniel kissed her there on the bridge, and a passing jogger whooped in celebration. They, laughed, embarrassed and happy, and exactly where they were supposed to be. That evening, Victoria stood in the apartment she now officially shared with Daniel, the walls finally covered with art and photos and evidence of a life being lived rather than just managed. She looked at the jade bracelet on her wrist, the one Li Hua had given her that last Thanksgiving, and she could almost hear her grandmother's voice. Love is not transaction. Love is not performance. Love is showing up when it's hard, being honest when it hurts, choosing each other even when you're scared. Li Hua had been right about all of it. The walls Victoria had built to protect herself had become the prison keeping her from everything that mattered, and it had taken hiring a stranger to pretend to love her to finally understand what real love actually required. Not perfection, not control, not invulnerability, just honesty, presence, the willingness to be seen in all your messy, imperfect, beautiful humanity. Victoria picked up her phone and texted her assistant. Clear my calendar for next Sunday. Recurring event, every week, non-negotiable, personal time. Then she walked into the kitchen where Daniel was making dinner, wrapped her arms around him from behind, and let herself feel grateful for the elaborate lie that had led her to the most honest thing in her life. You know someone in your life who's built walls so high they've forgotten what it feels like to be truly someone who's chosen safety over happiness, control over vulnerability, success over joy. Share this story with them. Remind them that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit we're lonely, ask for help, and let ourselves be loved by someone who sees us for who we really are. Because the walls we build to protect ourselves become the prisons that keep us from the very things that make life worth living.